something important is taking shape in global politics. At a moment when international relations are being driven by instability, economic strain, and strategic uncertainty linked to Donald Trump, one leader has started to stand apart, not through noise or confrontation, but through discipline, credibility, and calculated restraint. That leader is Canada's Prime Minister, Mark Carney. In just 1 year in office, Carney has moved from being an unconventional political choice to a figure many now regard as one of the most capable leaders Canada has produced in decades. What makes this transformation especially notable is the environment in which it has taken place. While global politics has been defined by disruption and unpredictability, Carney has positioned both himself and Canada as a source of balance. And that contrast is beginning to shape not only his leadership style, but Canada's broader role on the world stage. To understand Carney's first year, it is critical to understand the conditions he stepped into. Over the past year, global focus has largely centered on the United States, particularly under Donald Trump's leadership. Trade conflicts, tariff threats, and a more confrontational stance toward allies have introduced a level of unpredictability into global relations that few nations could afford to ignore. For Canada, that uncertainty carried immediate consequences. The United States is not only its closest ally, but also its most important economic partner. Any instability in that relationship directly affects Canadian jobs, trade flows, and long-term economic security. In that environment, Canadian leadership was no longer just about domestic governance. It became a matter of strategic positioning. Carney's rise must be viewed through that lens. He did not emerge in isolation. He emerged in response to a moment that demanded a different kind of leadership.
Because I think that what I just said was pretty obvious, right? I think Trump has been in the backdrop of everything, but also thinking about Trudeau and the relativeness of Carney's approach and skill set, his priorities vis-a-vis Trudeau was a good point and something I kind of glazed over. So I think there's also a potential that Carney's benefiting from that, where people were after 10 years saying to themselves, we need somebody new and not somebody else. And as you mentioned, that was reflective in the polls over a year ago with the Conservatives ahead. And Carney comes in, completely different approach. Pros and cons can be sort of debated, but definitely not the same type of approach as Trudeau. So I think that relativeness has helped him as well. And
what has set Carney apart over the past year is not only the direction of his policies, but how he is viewed internationally. In global forums and bilateral engagements, Canada's role has shifted from being a participant to becoming a contributor whose voice carries increasing influence. Carney's background in global finance and economic strategy has given him a level of credibility that resonates with leaders facing similar challenges. Rather than relying on symbolic gestures, his approach has been grounded in substance focused on economic stability, coordinated global responses, and practical cooperation. This shift has had a clear impact. Countries navigating uncertainty are now engaging with Canada not out of obligation, but out of genuine interest. There is a growing recognition that Canada under Carney offers a perspective that is measured, informed, and aligned with long-term stability. The importance of his leadership becomes even more apparent when placed within the broader global context. Donald Trump's approach to international relations has often emphasized leverage, pressure, and short-term advantage. While that strategy follows its own logic, it has also introduced volatility into alliances that were once predictable. Carney's approach, in contrast, is focused on continuity and collaboration. Instead of testing alliances, he has worked to strengthen them. Instead of creating new tensions, he has aimed to reduce them. This contrast has created a quiet but meaningful shift. Countries reassessing their strategic partnerships are increasingly drawn toward those who offer reliability. In that environment, Canada's position has strengthened, not through confrontation, but through consistency.
I think that Canadians are very proud of Mark Carney as he does his job in relation to Trump. He shows up at a meeting where he's made to sit in that dunce chair in the White House, and yet even though Trump tries to talk over him the whole time, the clips that he does manage to get out make a lot of sense and have everybody nodding agreement. He's done that well. Mr. Trudeau was well known. He had been around, one of the longer serving leaders when he would go to a G7 and other meetings, but nobody relied on Justin Trudeau to give them something substantive. People come to Mark Carney, as the Nordic countries did. Knowing that he was going to be in Norway, he had a meeting of all 5 Nordic countries. We have something in common. A lot of us are on the edge of the Arctic and want to talk about what that means for us. And that's the Carney draw.
This changing global perception has had clear effects domestically. Public support for Carney has remained steady and in many cases has grown, reflecting a broader sense that Canada is being governed with a level of competence suited to current challenges. This is not merely a reaction to external pressures. It also reflects the belief that Canada is being represented effectively on the global stage by a leader who understands both the risks and opportunities of the current international environment, especially at a time when uncertainty remains high. That perception carries significant political weight.
Just a little more than a year since he became Prime Minister, and Mark Carney is more popular with Canadians than ever. And that popularity is helping boost the Liberal Party brand. This, according to a new Nanos research survey based on telephone calls with 1,000 Canadian adults. The top line number from this data shows the Liberals with a growing lead over the Conservatives, now at 16 percentage points. And if an election were held now, the Nanos number shows nearly 48% of Canadians, almost half, would vote Liberal, compared to 31% for the Conservatives and just 11% for the New Democrats. No party has achieved such a high level of support in a poll since January of 2025, taken a few days after former Prime Minister Justin Trudeau resigned. And that was a Conservative Party lead. And of course, it evaporated by the time Canadians went to the polls last April. So what's driving this trend? Well, first of all, it looks like leadership. On the question of who they prefer as Prime Minister, nearly 57% chose Mark Carney, so he's outperforming his own party's brand, versus 22% who chose Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre.
This brings us to a question that is now being asked more openly. How should Mark Carney's first year in office be judged in historical terms? It is still early, and such comparisons should be made carefully. However, the case in his favor is not difficult to understand. Carney assumed office at a time of heightened global risk and shifting alliances. In that context, he has managed to position Canada as stable, credible, and increasingly relevant in international discussions. That does not automatically place him among the greatest leaders in Canadian history, but it does position his first year in a category that demands serious consideration. As things stand today, Mark Carney's first year has already reshaped how Canada is perceived globally. In an environment defined by uncertainty, Canada has come to represent something increasingly valuable: stability, reliability, and strategic clarity. While other leadership styles have introduced volatility into global relationships, Carney has emphasized continuity and cooperation. That distinction is not just about style. It has real consequences for how countries interact and build partnerships. Whether this trajectory continues will depend on how effectively domestic challenges are managed in the months ahead. But for now, one conclusion is difficult to ignore. Canada is no longer simply reacting to global developments. It is helping shape them. And that shift is closely tied to the leadership approach that has defined Mark Carney's first year in office. If you want clear analysis of the biggest geopolitical shifts shaping Canada and the world, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next report.